Hey, thanks for joining us. I'm Michael Mullin. We have a very special guest today, and we're going to learn a lot about commitment in the community and what people do around Miami-Dade County to help it. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Cristhian Mancera Mejia. I'm the chairman for the Community Council for Area 11. I am a foreign Colombian attorney, and I also have a nonprofit organization that helps Colombian and Latino migrants around the country, which is called Servicolic. So That's who I am.
Terrific. Let's talk a little bit about the public service that you do as far as on the Community Council. For some people don't know what a Community Council is, so why don't you tell them?
Well, the Community Council, it's a government body of decision-making within our communities. It was enacted back in the 90s, late 90s, especially to provide like a direct representation for unincorporated areas because we don't have cities. So it provides this form of representation. And even though over the years, some have tried to strip the Community Council of its powers for ridiculous reasons, but the Community Council is a very important body of decision-making within our communities. And it's kind of like the first base of representation that people can be in touch with because it does, focus on areas of planning, zoning, and decision-making within our communities.
And for the people that have always known about them, in the old days, that was before 1997, if you had an issue with zoning, you'd have to go downtown.
Correct.
And get on this long agenda and take off a whole day and have to wait for 10 or 20 people or maybe more in front of you. Now they can go to their area, their neighborhood, and go to a community council which hears zoning hearings.
Correct.
And you can go make your presentation or go there and support something or go there and object to it.
I agree. Yes, correct.
And our organization here at Community Newspapers, we understood about local, since my father drilled that in my head for all the years. And people move, when people move into a neighborhood, they want to be involved in that, and we see that. That's why there's 34 cities now within the county, and why unincorporated areas, unfortunately, Kendall, it should have already been incorporated. Thank you very much, Joe Martinez, for killing that, former commissioner.
That is correct.
And I told him so as well. And when areas or cities or there's some government agency, people are connected to that. And we see when people show up for your community council, and I was there the other night, and people get an opportunity to go and meet their local representatives. So you've been doing that for how long as on that board?
Well, we've been there for 3 years. We were appointed in 23 because one of the things that people do not know concerning that particular community council for Area 11 is that before that it was almost like dead for like a year because there were not that many board members. You only had one or two, so there was not enough quorum. So most of the items were being brought up directly to the county commission, which was a huge, downturn for the community because there wasn't an opportunity to have those items heard like locally. Then came Commissioner Gonzalez. He was appointed by Governor DeSantis, and then he appointed me and other board members to fulfill the responsibilities of the community council. And then in 24, I got reelected by the community, and I've been there already like for almost 3 years now.
That's wonderful. And tell us about your other community involvement, how you give back.
Well, we are working, and we have been working to represent Colombian, Venezuelan, and all Latino migrants that are usually underrepresented. They don't have that many voices within the community. Not that many elected officials are from those countries, and mostly because most of them who have arrived here over the years, although they have adapted, they have gotten involved within the American system. Most Latinos that come into the United States, they do not connect directly with how government works. Why is it important to connect with local officials? What is that concept of community council? What is a commissioner? What is a state representative? So they still believe, because they come from these Latin American countries, that the president is the one that decides everything, and then they have a congressman and a senator, and that's all they should care about. But here locally, they don't even understand what the zip code is about and what that entails, what type of responsibilities that brings, and also what type of opportunities that can bring them if they have small businesses. So I have been spending my whole time doing events where I teach people and folks about these important things, but always from a pedagogical standpoint, helping migrants understand how we work, what the country represents, the history of the United States, why English is important. so that the process of adaptation becomes more like, let's say, easier for them, because most of the times people, I'm in Miami, so, hablemos español, let's talk Spanish and everything will go, yeah, that might be okay in certain areas, but if you want to make money, you want to grow, you got to speak English, because at some point you will have to deal with Americans who speak English. This is an English-speaking country. So that has been my devotion, trying to make people, because when I came to the country when I was a little kid, I always said that I've always been privileged because I spoke the language, so I didn't have to go through all these hurdles of like the adaptation, because like I always had the country since I was a kid in my veins or in my heart. So the U.S. for me was never a stranger. I always had the two countries. But for some other people, it hasn't been like that. So since I was a little kid, I would see people in New York where I was raised struggling with the language. They didn't understand many things, and they always would ask for translations and trying to get the information. And most of the times the information would come half explained. So that's why in this opportunity that I've had in life is I've been trying to teach people things that for me are important to understand what America stands for and why English is so important.
When you were young, you figured that part out, that you could do that.
Yes.
That is tremendous. So here you are 30 years later.
Correct. Yeah.
Doing that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And by the way, I would share the story, like in New York, in our public school system, we used to have like Chinese, Russian migrants that would come, and they would speak no English. We also had like people from South America, blah, blah, blah. And we would be paired with these folks, with these children, and we would be kind of like we used to call that their pals, and we would teach them the language, the customs, and it was always amazing. I always share that story because I think that the growth that I saw in those people that were my same age, but they were coming from, from Russia or China at the time, when they began to speak English and they began to understand how the system would work around the school, it was amazing, because you would have kind of like a brother or a sister already, because they would feel so happy that you kind of like guided them into the whole system at that time.
You ever thought about becoming a teacher?
I have been a teacher for a while. This is one of my since I was actually, it's interesting. I was going to law school, and I was always asking my mother for money to go out to parties and blah, blah, blah. One day I say, I've had enough of this. I want to get some independence. And I began teaching English at the time to people, and I began working for a language school at the time. I got my first paycheck. I was so excited. And since then, I got into a scenario. I opened my own business teaching language to adults.
How old were you then?
I was, when I started, I was probably like 19 or 18 years old. Yeah. And then it grew, and the company grew actually quite a bit. And then we began teaching companies and businesses in Colombia at the time. Because back then I was there in Bogota, and it was a whole like range of amazing experiences teaching people English, but from a business perspective. And then I became certified. I took some courses in pedagogical, and pedagogy, so that I can, be an instructor. Then I became a university professor. So I've been a university professor since I was like 23 or 24 years old. So I love education. One of the things that most people do not know about me is that I'm pretty much into educating. So if you look at everything that I do, is always not like giving people or telling people what to do. I always try to tell people or teach people things that perhaps they don't understand it from a different perspective.
Did you know
using
that
education.
when you were 12, 13, 14 years old?
What?
That you could do these things?
When I was 12 years old, I was already, I already had ran for school president at the time. So I was.
Anzoni's over there producing. You hear that, Anzoni? So you already knew that.
Yes, sir.
One of the things we realize is sometimes people find that passion very early. When did you start recognizing it?
I'll share a story with you. I ran for school president when I was 9 years old. I was in New York, in Queens, in a mostly Jewish community. This was in around Main Street. Yeah, in Kew Gardens in New York. And it was amazing because we ran for that school presidency. But I was like in a school of 1,200 students. I was a minority student, but I spoke the language. I didn't I understood how everything worked at the time. And I said, I'm going to run. But my best friend, he's a Jewish American kid. So
did you speak English and Spanish then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I still have a very good friend who's a Jewish American with whom I grew up in New York, and we did the campaign with him. I remember we would go.
9.
Yeah. We would go through the hallways of the school in New York. This was PS 117, by the way.
And we're going to get on the campaign after this. But so you were 9.
Yeah.
So you realized it when you were 8 and 7 also.
Yeah, because I was always the kid doing stuff when I was in Cali, in Colombia. I was always the kid curious about, hey, let's do this, let's do that. I was always the one raising the hand to participate.
Tell me about your folks, how they helped ingrain that in you.
Well, my father, he's a Colombian attorney, but he's always been involved in leadership. On my mother's side, my grandfather was a lifetime leader for farmers in Colombia. He was very much involved in what used to be a very big political party, which was the Liberal Party, and he ran for office. He was involved in the mayoral administration in a small city in Colombia, in my state. So we have that vein of politics that comes from both my mother's side and my father's side. So you actually
didn't have any choice. It was
probably
already pre-decided.
It was already, yes, correct. It was probably already
before you were even around.
Correct.
Okay, here we are. Here we are. We got to put all that stuff together.
That is
it's wonderful. So when you talk about campaigning when you're 9 years old in school, and then recently here with the community council. So what does the next 5 years look like for you?
Well, it's an interesting question because we have been approached by different individuals asking the same question, like, what is it that you want to do? And what I want to do in the next 2 years is definitely consolidate something that I saw when I came in, which was that the community councils, both the board members and the community councils, are the most underrated elected official position in this county and in the state. But because for some reason, there's not enough value given to that position, and that pisses me off because you have very valuable people that work within these community councils. They spend a lot of money on campaigns, yet when events come for elected officials, we're not invited because we're like the third grade elected officials.
And that's a non-paid position.
Yeah, it's a non-paid position, yes. But still the commitment of these individuals is very high. So one of my commitments has been to raise the level of attention to the community council, especially in Area 11, understanding that we do represent the community. We are elected officials. We are contributing our time. So I remember that at some point there has been a discussion as to whether these positions should be only appointed or not elected. And of course, they have to be elected, but the county should also give more attention to these bodies, because you either do two things. You either incorporate these areas and then you create a city council, or if you're not going to incorporate it, then give life to these community councils that do serve a very important purpose, because I don't think commissioners want to be dealing with what we deal. And even though it does, some of these items go to appeal in some cases, but I do believe that is something that I have prioritized, because I think that we do very good work for the community and it has to be seen. So that's my priority for the next 2 years. But long term, in terms of to answer your question, it's complicated because we have, in 2 years, we'll have the mayor's office coming. That race will come up. Commission will come up. State rep will come up. And federal office will come up. So there are many offices that we can decide to run. My objective right now is to be focused on the community council.
When you talk about, raise the posture or awareness of the local community councils, how would you do that? And to whom do you want that to change to? I mean, do you want it to residents, or you want the people downtown to say, these are great organizations out here, we should pay more attention and pay them more homage because they're representing this, how many hearings they did last year, which would come back to us, which for sure they don't want to do it. And the people that are in Kendall, wherever, they don't want to have to go downtown.
Because I think there's been a misconception and I think this has happened in a few years where we have had bad apples at community councils. That is a fact, but that's not the issue. I would never go in front of a stage and tell someone that I am a commissioner if I'm not. That is something that is misleading, and it's something that I would never do and never done. And even when people have the confusion, because people do have the confusion, I never stay silent. Like if I go in front of a TV interview or whatever, and somebody makes a mistake and it says, "Oh, you are the commissioner for this and that." No, I am a community council board member. And then, but you always have to make that distinction, because I think in the past, some commissioners have had like this idea or concept that board members are going to be like going after them or trying to remove them from office, when in reality, we pose no threat to any commissioner, because we don't have either the resources, the power that a commissioner has. But I think commissioners have lost sight or missed the idea that if they fortify the concept of the community council and they do it in a way that is respectful and that it really touches base on what the community really wants, then those bodies of election that people go and elect these leaders would have a different concept. And I think downtown does have to pay more attention to community councils, because there is a difficulty sometimes in trying to get people interested in these positions, because at the end of the day, we just do the math. Like, you ran. You got to spend at least between $10,000 to $20,000 in a campaign to become a board member, but then you become elected, and then you're downgraded to a situation where you're not giving the respect that you should have, because you did run, you are an elected official, and those things are, I think, things that do have to change, because, I know many folks that are board members, and they deserve the respect because they ran,
Yes.
and they're elected officials.
And for people that haven't run, they may be unaware of the risk to yourself in there, as far as your job, your family,
Correct.
your health sometimes, all right? And then we understand some of the issues, not of the zoning issues, but the issue of having your head out there for people to come and chop it off, whether they're yelling at you or they're mad at you. And in today's environment, it's pretty precarious for a lot of those people. I would be negligent if I didn't bring up my congratulations to Anthony Venezuela, who is a bright young man.
He is.
And when he was in high school, I used to follow him, and he used to do a couple of shows here. And, all through college, I would send him a little star. I said, "You are a rising star." And I remember when he became the president of the student council in Miami-Dade. I think it was during the pandemic, if I remember right. And what a great young man he is, and he's in the real estate arena now, and I'm very, very happy for him. I happened to see him the other night, and I wish him well with that. And tell us about some of the other people that are on that board.
Well, we have amazing board members. Valenzuela is one of them, as you mentioned. I mean, he's a very good individual, good character. We also have Angel Garcia, and we have Alex Diaz there, and we have a young guy, board member Fernandez.
I saw him come in.
So, we have a variety of individuals there that contribute their time. They're very valuable individuals. So, we are 7, and we're very good people. But kind of like going back to the question that you asked about downtown, hopefully at some point we understand that board members, they fulfill a duty in unincorporated areas. That's why community councils were created. And I've always looked at this. It's very interesting because community council board members, they cannot say they are community councilmen, because oh my God, then they're going to be confused with a commissioner, and the commissioner is going to die if he's confused. Are you serious? How are you going to be confused? Like, you are the commissioner, or if it's a he or if it's a she, there's no way to confuse. I think that's something. Yeah, that's ridiculous. And then there's this apprehension that we are on the board of county commissioners, and commissioners are called commissioners, but then board members cannot say they are councilmen or councilwomen. Because if you say that, no, you're not a city, so don't say that, because then you're violating the ethics code.
Is that the community council? Is that the name in there?
That is the name. That is Community Council Zoning Appeals Board. And every few years, one commissioner comes around that feels intimidated, and then they put in legislation.
Are you implying this is recent?
I don't think it's recent, although there was an attempt, I guess 2 years ago, to turn the community councils from elected to only to appointments, which I thought was a mistake. Aside from that, I know that in the past there has been attempts. I think both by I don't want to say the name, but I know that because I don't want to be wrong on that. But commissioners that were there before saw or felt threatened by certain board members in different areas, and then they tried to diminish or take away powers from the community council. And one of those acts was, let's not call them community councilman or community councilwoman because they feel they have too much power. And I always try to say to my board members, actually, the other day we having a discussion, and then I said hello to board member Diaz, and board member Diaz says to me, "Chairman, not board member, we're community councilman." And then he began talking about how he felt uncomfortable by being called a board member, and he made the analogy between the board of county commissioners, blah, blah, blah. But that's just an example to tell you how ridiculous it is that people that get they're elected officials, yet they cannot say, I am an elected official, because someone will feel intimidated by that.
One of the things we recognize, each operation has internal conversation, internal words as compared to outside. We have conversations about the technical aspects of what we do here. We don't have those conversations with our customer because they don't care about that. They care about something else. So quite frankly, I think the only one that gives a hoot on board might be the people downtown, not the guy down the street. No, he's dealing with you guys. And we know the names get confused all the time. But unfortunately, when I hear that, it's sort of bothersome because we are very supportive of local community councils. It's a wonderful thing. And when that first started, I forgot who the commissioner was, we were very supportive of it because it filled a need that was there for people to be able to connect to their county government without spending a half a day to go down there.
Agreed. And one of the things that is interesting is that during my tenure there, I've had many community members come up to me asking me simple questions as to, hey, like, what's going to happen tonight? Or if this is approved, then we're okay. The development's not going to go through. And I always try to explain to them how the whole procedure works. I say, well, if we deny it, then this will go up to the county commission. But it gives you an opportunity to understand that since we provided a unanimous vote in some cases, then you're able to use that so that when you go up to the county commission, you can use that as a argument, to avoid it.
That's one of the great reasons why we need local boards, so that the guy that lives down the street can walk in and ask those kind of questions. You can't do that downtown. It's not going to happen. And you're going to have like a minute and have to wait. So anyway,
but I do want to say, though, that, I mean, in terms of the confusion, like, I've never, like, in my case, like, I've always shown great respect, for example, when Commissioner Martinez was the commissioner, and then when Commissioner Gonzalez came, like, there's never been a moment in which I'm always like, going to be saying, oh, well, the community councils are more important. No, like, Commissioner Gonzalez, he is like the boss of District 11. I understand that. But what I try to kind of like ascertain or trying to make people understand is that I'm not really into that. Like, I'm not waking up every day thinking, oh, like, there's someone that has more power than me, because everywhere you go, everybody has more power than you. My worry is that those people within West Kendall have an understanding of why we have a community council, but most importantly, why we need to explain to them how local politics works so that those people can be involved. The rest, like, it just works out on its own. But I'm not worried about those things. I'm worried mostly about working for the community and being a tool for the county to help reach those communities, not someone who will go against anybody.
So one of the things, and I used to be very active in that local arena, and we do a lot of stories on it, is that lots of times people say, as a matter of fact, right down the street, somebody said, turn that into a park over there, privately owned. I go, you want that owner who can put up an 8-story building to put a park there. It actually is a park now, which is just grass, all right?
Correct.
And that property comes with certain rights, whether it's 2-story or 5 or apartment or a house or whatever it is. Lots of times the people that are objecting to developments forget that something's going to go there. It's a matter of when it's going to go and what size it's going to be. So somebody might go, they want to put up a 5-story building, and they're asking for a zoning change. Well, maybe they can already go to 3. So it's not the difference between 0 and 5. It's the difference between 3 and 5.
Correct. And understanding something, like the other day I sat down with 4 community members, and they were asking me why we don't have like a metro rail extension all the way down to like Chrome in West Kendall, or something more, that would help move people from that area into downtown. And I said, well, it's been proposed, and most people who live in those areas that have 500 to 700,000 homes, they don't want Metro Rail going in the middle of Kendall Drive, because their only concern about is the value of their homes, but at the same time they're concerned about the noise and blah, blah, blah. And then they said, yeah, but we need it because there's a lot of issues with traffic. And I said, yeah, but then we have to find different solutions. And then they brought up the A36 extension, which when I ran for commissioner in 2020, I was in favor of that, and they killed it because of environmental concerns, which I understand, but we need it. It's not a joke. It's just how we get things done. I don't think it's always a situation where I try to explain to the community, yeah, we have environmental concerns that we need to meet, and we need to understand and respect that, but at the same time, we can work around those rules and see how we can get an extension that helps alleviate traffic concerns for the community. And I think it's all a matter of how you explain things to the community, because sometimes people, if you become all technical, they're not going to understand anything.
Yep.
But if you bring it down to a level where they kind of put themselves in a position where, oh, you know what, this makes sense, then the A36 is no longer a behemoth that is going to destroy the farmland. It's something that would help the community.
Years ago, I was in one of the high schools out there, and people wanted that extension. And I looked at it, was one of the auditoriums, it had to be 400 people there. We need some relief, all right?
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, the county, whoever it was, killed it, all right? And from what I hear, and I heard it the other night, I wasn't sure if they were still proceeding with eminent domain, but there seems to be some activity out there, and it's going to be called something else. And hopefully there'll be some solutions to some of those problems so that people will still be able to live in, if you will, the suburbs, all right, as compared to downtown, and there'll be some effective means of mobility. And we have a show by the CITT folks, the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust. They don't talk about traffic, they talk about mobility. Go downtown, all right, yeah, we get it. 80,000 people plus live there, and you got to figure out how to move around.
Correct.
And that's where we are in our development, about how we're going to get around. Certainly things are going to be different, and we look forward to seeing some solutions in Kendall, and maybe our local county commissioner, Mr. Gonzalez, will be able to engage in another conversation about turning parts of Kendall into a city. And as you know, the MAC years ago, Municipal Advisory Committee, said this area would do it, 40 or 50,000. When that happens, people will flock to it, and there'll be the sense of identity more than now. The closest thing to the sense of identity, I think, is the community council and maybe a movie theater.
Yeah, but when they killed the idea of Kendall becoming a city, which was the West End project, it was killed because we're talking about 2008, 2009, and that whole concept back then was hey, we're going to turn these farmlands into a city. No. We don't want this to become a city,
Yeah.
But we have forward until now.
Yes.
And we have grown a lot. And I think that is something that has to be on the discussion.
And whoever it is, they're going to need some great campaign people.
I agree.
So I'm sure people have helped you along your way, some mentors and people or friends and I want you to think about them for a second. Why don't you look into this camera right over here? All right, and why don't you thank them, if you'd like to? Okay,
definitely. Well, first of all, I would definitely thank my mother, who's always been there, and my family, who's always been there for me as well. But I've had many individuals who have, helped me, get to where I am today. But I would definitely thank my community, because without them, the people that, volunteer, the people that help us, and, sometimes people say, how do you do all what you do? Is that, well, I've been preparing for this for a while, and I have a team of people that, work with me, help me. And to them, a big appreciation to everybody that's always supporting what we do, because at the end of the day, it's always about community first, and those folks believe in the message. And I'm inviting you, if you feel like you want to partake or help us, you can join us and help us grow this concept that these areas that are not incorporated can become really amazing areas, as long as we create that identity that we're looking for.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Okay, and thank you. Let's look at this camera right over here. Folks, my brother Gren and I, first of all, appreciate you watching. And second, we subscribe to the Disney rule, which is when you hug someone, don't stop until they do. Have a good day. Bye now.